We'll be covering many different aspects of construction, they include job roles, what you can achieve on site, all different things that are included in construction, the education you need to get there, the training that you need to get there, how you get into this construction industry, and different ways you can look at applying for jobs and sort of things like that. So the first thing will be the job roles. There's many different job roles in construction. You've got the typical ones that everyone sort of associates with, bricklaying, plastering, and then you've got other ones that people aren't so sure on. So you've got carpentry, you've got glazing, you've got roofers, all different things like this that people don't generally seem to think of. Many different job roles in the construction industry. Most of them need, CSS cards or health and safety passports to get on site. Hours in the environment that you were working in. A general person on construction site will work between 38 to 42 hours, depending on the time they start and the time they finish. Take a bricklayer for instance, they'll start very early in the morning, say 7 o'clock, but they could be finished say for 3 o'clock. Reason being is obviously they need to get there on site early in the morning when it's coldest, so it's best for the materials that they're using, and obviously they don't want to be doing 12-hour shifts and getting the pointing wrong at the end of the day. The work that you'll be doing will be, dirty and hard work most of the time, but you will find it enjoyable. If you put the effort in, I'm sure there'll be rewards there. Things that providers the employers will provide for you are things like PPE, perhaps, maybe a little bit of training. Obviously, it's essential that you wear protection equipment on site. Your hard hats, your goggles, your steel-toe cap boots, things like that. You should be particularly fit when you're working on site. Obviously, certain things like bricklayers will be shifting 3, 4, 5 bricks at a time. They're reasonably heavy. You'll need to keep fit and strong and healthy. You need to be practical when you're working on a construction site. Obviously, health and safety is a big aspect. You don't want to be walking in front of, a Manitou or a forklift truck maybe that's carrying 2 or 3 tons of cement. As I can imagine, it'd rather hurt if it fell on you. Other things that you may need when working on a construction site is you need to work well in a team. As you can imagine, there'll be a team of bricklayers or a team of plasterers working on site, working under a foreman. So you need to have good communication skills and such as like. You also need to be able to listen to instructions, verbal instructions, but you also need to be able to understand formal instructions, so written instructions that you may get from a foreman or an architect. Or a quantity surveyor, somebody that's on site with a bit of authority. Salaries. Now, I know most of you will find this an important bit, so I'll lead you in slightly. Under 19s, apprentice, people like that, you'll be looking to earn between 8,000 and 14,000 a year, depending on obvious qualifications you've had or any prior experience. Anybody who's working towards MVQ level 2s or above, you could be looking towards the 15 to 18 mark, depending again on your experience. And anybody who's maybe got an HNC in construction, a high national certificate in construction, possibly from a college, you could be looking at the tops of maybe 21, 22, until you've got the experience and promotions, perhaps to foreman on site or anything like that. How to get into a job? There are many ways you can get into a job in the construction industry. You can possibly start at the college end, so you get yourself an apprenticeship, work through a national diploma, high national certificate. Obviously with apprenticeships you're in employment and they work through that part-time, depending on the employer's responsibilities and the capabilities you need for site. You could do the educational route, so again you start off at college after secondary school. You do a national diploma full-time for 2 years, then you move on possibly to a high national diploma, an HND, for another 2 years, which is also the first year of your foundation degree. And then you do another 3 years at university perhaps, or an open university maybe, depending on what sort of route you're looking for. An architect would spend 3 to 5 years depending on if they took a year out. A quantity surveyor will take 3 to 5 years depending on what sort of industry they're looking at, whether it's personal QSing or site QSing. Entry requirements to site, perhaps for education. There's no formal entry requirements to get onto site. The only things you do need is to be competent and responsible when on site. So this is where things like the CSCS card, health and safety passport come into play. So just take the CSCS card for example. This is a competency card anybody who works on a site would need to use. Need to have on them at all times. This will cover your PPE equipment, it will cover health and safety, risk assessments, and just a general overview of what would expect you from site, from your foreman, or from anybody who would do an inspection perhaps on site, similar to something you might have experienced at school, an inspection that headmaster might do of the classroom. You'd expect the same thing from an architect or a quantity surveyor on site. Things like the diploma in construction. This would cover anything like that for your entry requirements. You may do additional training while on site. Say for instance you get a job as a roofer. You could do an MVQ in roofing while on site. So you do your 4 days at work, 1 day maybe sat in the cabin under supervision doing your work. There are all sorts of training methods that you can undergo, depending on again which industry you fall into, architecture, quantity surveying, whether it's a labouring, anything like that. The training is generally provided by the employer that you work for, but you can do external training if it's up to you, and the employer may see fit to do this. The training will come from a college or a university, or perhaps a training provider such as Potential4skills, where you could gain your CSCS cards, your safety passports, similar things like that. You can also do training in the field that you're in. So for instance plastering, you can do a grade 1, a grade 2, grade 3 plastering, and this goes from as minimal as skimming walls to as far on as filling brand new buildings, plasterboards, all sorts of things like that. Just to discuss what we've gone over so far then, job roles, what sort of jobs are involved in the construction industry, the sort of training and education that you should have and then be provided for by your employer or potential employer. What you look at in terms of education, in terms of health and safety, talked about the CSCS cards and health and safety passports, the sort of equipment that you use on site, PPE for example, and then we looked at sort of salaries, what you should expect as an apprentice, maybe with a higher level of qualifications, and then as you gain experience. If you require any more information on the construction industry, you can visit our website at www.potential4skills.co.uk, or you can drop us an email at info@potential4skills.co.uk. I hope you enjoy the rest of your learning, and thank you for listening.